Hey, welcome back to No Hype Beer Reviews. Unless it's your first time, then welcome. Please consider subscribing. If you do, hit the notification bell, get all the updates. Rest of today's video is Thursday. On Thursdays, I sometimes do Thursday's Thirsty Thoughts, where I come up with a topic, or you do, and I try to do a video about it. And people responded very well to the last one I did like this, and definitely a lot of comments said do more of those. So I tried to jot down some other beers that I remember the first time I had them that were also kind of like more well-known beers. It just seems like for a video such as this, it's good if a lot of the people who would like see my thumbnail and the title of videos are scrolling on YouTube, do I want to click on this video, that they're like, oh, I know this beer. Oh yeah, it'd be cool to hear his first thoughts on it, or like the first time he had it versus just like, I've never heard of that beer, you know? So I'm trying to get that sweet spot where I remember the first time I had it and it's a beer most beer people would have heard of. And I'm sure today's beer needs no introduction. And you're probably like, why are you wasting time? Everyone knows Heady Topper at this point. But not the time I first had it. So I have to take you back about 15 years ago. It would have definitely been around 15 years. I couldn't quite pin it down, but let's say 15 years. It's definitely not 5 years earlier or later than that, right around 15. And apparently YouTube pays me every time I say 15. And well before the channel, and definitely consider how different beer was 15 years ago. There were so many beers, like this is where I could still basically only get local beer near me. And then maybe, you know, your Dogfish Head, Stones, probably like Great Divide, some of those Colorado breweries, Great Lakes. I'm trying to think some of their big ones you could get back then. So Heady Topper certainly was not a thing like today where we get a drop locally maybe once a month or so. It sells out quickly. I haven't been able to score it recently. But, you know, they were not doing New York State drops, or maybe like New York City, some bar they knew maybe got a drop. Like it was not a thing, you know. This is way before that. This is before you know, like hazy IPAs and Treehouse, Trillium, any of that kind of other half. So this is before those kind of hazy beers. Hazy beers like the one I'm drinking now, which make sure you check out tomorrow's video. It's a local beer. It's really good. But anyway, so this was the time where I would go on Beer Advocate and I would print, like top 100 beers. Top 100, were they still doing, or was this before maybe they were doing like top 100 classical beers? They had a couple different of these lists, like the top beers. So I printed out one of those top beer lists, and I probably, I would have, or maybe I didn't quite print it out yet. I've been before I printed it out. I was just looking every once in a while at these beers. And you might see one of the ones I could relatively easily get, maybe Arrogant Bastard, which was the last video, the first one I ever did in this series, but the last one also that I did. You know, maybe like Dogfish Head's Worldwide Stout. So there might have been some beers I could get that were on that list. Heck, I think because Flower Power might have been on the list back then. So anyway, the point being, I was familiar with this list, but I certainly didn't know them, you know, backwards and forwards. I certainly didn't know what they all look like. They were just, I mean, you could click on the link and see a picture, but I wasn't necessarily doing that. I was just, you know, trying to see what are these best beers in the world as people rated them on Beer Advocate. Can I get them now? If I travel to like a state that maybe is, you know, carries that beer or near the brewery or something, you know, just kind of trying to be somewhat aware of it. Knew a couple people at the time who were getting into craft beer, were already into it. And one of them was my friend Chelsea, and she had a brother living in Vermont at the time. So I believe she had gone up to visit him, not he had come to town in New York. And she was bringing back his favorite beer in Vermont. You probably see where the story's going already. So she comes back and we're going to do probably a beer tasting, do a few beers. So she comes in and she has Heady Topper. And she goes, yeah, this is my brother's favorite beer. It's so good. I also love it. And I'm like, Heady Topper. Okay, yeah, Heady Topper. I think I've heard of Heady Topper. And if I remember the story correctly, Chelsea was not thinking about this being considered top 5 best beers in the world, which is where it was rated at the time. Maybe even number 1. It might have been Westy 12. It was in that realm. Maybe Pliny the Elder was in there as well. And I think we drank it first. I'm like, wow, this is really good. I'm like, you know, just give me a sec. I gotta go look this up. I think I know this beer. I'm one of those people, Like I was saying about not seeing the visual, I'm a very visual person. If I saw the label, then it probably would have for me been instant, like I know this beer. I'm just such a visual person that it's much easier for me than names and words sometimes. So I'm like, but I think I've heard this one before, Chelsea. Just give me a sec. I'm going to go to I probably didn't even have a smartphone at the time. Let me go to my computer and look this up real quick. So I go to Beer Advocate and I look up Hey Topper. I'm like, yo! I go back out to the living room. I'm like, Chelsea, like this, not only had I heard of this beer before, but this is considered, I think it was number one at the time, like the best beer in the world. Like what, or top 5, like best IPA, whatever it was, And I'm like, oh my God, Chelsea, this is freaking awesome. Just blew my mind how good it was. And then to be like, wait, this is that beer that they were saying was like also like really amazing, and it was. And at the time I could get some pretty tasty IPAs and double IPAs. The Dogfish had ones like I mentioned. Ithaca's Flower Power was banging back then. Nothing against it now, but like man, it was so good back then. So like I could get, that was actually the first IPA I ever liked. So like I had some really good IPAs and double IPAs back then, but this was plus like things like Lagunitas and stuff. So like I'd had, West Coasty IPAs. I've had with like Ithaca's Flower Power and Dogfish Heads, like East Coast interpretation of IPAs, which were still pretty close. It's a step away from West Coast, but like, it's a little easier to see. And then obviously Heady's a little bit closer to how we think of hazies today, but so it's got, some of that stuff, but it's also got its roots in the West Coast and the East Coast kind of IPA, but it's another big step away from that stuff. And it was unique and interesting. I remember that, and then also just super flavorful. I mean, to this day, I try not to do it on camera because every time I try not to swear on camera, but every time I seem to open it up and I get that first whiff, a swear word comes out of my mouth because I'm so ecstatic at how good it smells. And it's just like, oh, every single time, oh, fill in the blank, guys. It's so good. Now I gotta like really try to get it the next time it drops in Albany. But yeah, so that was the first time I had Hey Topper. It was a surprise. She didn't say I'm bringing back Hey Topper. She just said I'm bringing back my brother's favorite beer from near where. Actually, I might not have even known it was from. No, I didn't know it was Vermont. But I certainly wasn't thinking it was Heady Topper, and I certainly didn't put 2 and 2 together till I looked it back up. And I'm glad the beer lived up but I went in blind. I'm like, I've heard of it, but I don't know how I've heard of it necessarily. Let me try it. It's delicious. Let me go look it up. Yeah, this is that beer. Yeah, do you guys remember the first time you had Heady Topper? Are you still seeking it or something? Anything, everything? Comment section below. Let's get a conversation going. Once you're done doing that, make sure you check me out on Instagram and Untapped. It's No Hype Beer Reviews at both those places. So please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, imbibe. Cheers, everyone.